All right, whatever. Hey there. Hey, Nelson.
Hey, Bronson.
My wife just fucked me up right before this thing started. Okay. All right. I'm
Lock
ready.
you
Let's
out?
go.
She lock you out?
Well, no, she's starting the AC, and I'm like, it's cool out here. Like the temperature's really nice. So I don't know why we need the AC going, but whatever.
Well, it's hot here. I got a red sun. So,
It's really fucking bizarre because it's July in Hawaii. It's not normally cool, but I don't know, climate change or something, because it's been a very mild and beautiful summer. I don't know why.
well, we got a really hot summer, and right now they got the forest fires up in BC. Means it's really bad air, really thick.
Oh shit! Oh, you live in BC?
Look at
Oh
it.
shit!
Huh?
You live in BC?
No. I live in the outside Seattle, but their smoke has come down.
I was in Vancouver recently, and I was just very impressed with that city. I really liked it, and I enjoyed it.
I don't know if you can see the haze. Can you see the sun there?
That's nice. I like your wherever you live. I like your house.
It's a condo unit. It's pretty cool. It's pretty good. But yeah, the sun is, man, it is bright red. And it's still hot. But
I guess maybe we before we get into it, we should offer some background. So you're obviously a Christian, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I too am a Christian, but I would kind of consider myself an atheist ally in that I've been a part of the atheist community for all of my adult life, basically since about 14, 15, somewhere around there is when I, started frequenting atheist forums. And actually, my first dabbling into debating and things like that was over the evolution issue. So that's kind of how I got my feet wet and got my dick wet, is debating young Earth creationists and explaining why evolution is both fact and theory simultaneously. I know a lot of people, it's hard for people to wrap their minds around that, but it's kind of like gravity. There's the law of gravity, but there's also the theory of gravity. They're two totally different things. One explains why. One is just a description of what's going on.
Well, evolution is not provable, but that's kind of the point of this debate. It's not livable. It
certainly is. But go ahead.
Well, that's not this debate, but the point of this debate is that no one can live under the theory of evolution. You can't live consistently with it.
Okay. So I guess maybe walk me through your argument then, and I'll
if you want,
I'll try to find some holes in it.
So the title is Atheistic Naturalistic Evolutionary Worldview. It's impossible for anybody to live consistently within. And so what I'm going to say is that the basic naturalist worldview, that there is no immaterial world, right? That, in fact, you had a debate with Joel, and although I agree with you, Joel, from his perspective of a naturalistic worldview, is correct. That from a naturalistic worldview, there is no free will. You are just a collection of atoms, and as the actions that you take are just the reactions of chemicals within the brain that cause you to do that.
Just to clear something up real quick, I want to make it absolutely crystal clear that he doesn't actually believe that he doesn't have free will, because otherwise he could not believe in morality in any case.
Okay, well, that's my point. So my point is that if you are a naturalist, you must believe there is no free will. But if you believe there is no free will, you have no choice but to believe it, and there is no reason to think that it's actually true, right? Nobody can live within that worldview because people do believe in morals. People say there's subjective morality, but if I rob your house, you're going to go call the cops on me or something, right? You're going to demand justice, some kind of objective justice. And I say, robbing your house, that was moral to me. I mean, I don't see what the problem here is. I wanted your stuff, I got your stuff, right? And you say, well, it violates your personal view of morality, but I say it didn't violate my view of morality. Who are you to place your morals on me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of my point, is that you can't both believe in that there is no free will and believe that there actually is no free will.
Oh, well, it's fine to, like, let's say, for example, someone were a murderer and they also simultaneously believed that they had no control over whether or not they were a murderer. What's wrong with that? I mean, you can have both of those beliefs, can't you?
Well, you can believe whatever you want, but you have control over yourself, right? You can't say that. You can say that I killed this person and it wasn't of my own free will. So, okay, you can say that, but nobody can live that way. I mean, the murderer might be able to say that in his own head or something, but he can't live consistently within the idea of there is no free will. He's going to go out and, I'm going to say, well, I had no free will but to lock you in prison or something like that. And he's going to say, oh, please don't do that. Well, you're implying that I can change my mind, that, everything is not determined, right? So I'm going to come at you. Let's say I don't want to get, but you kill someone's kids, and I come out and I arrest you, and I'm a cop, and I arrest you, and you say, well, it wasn't my fault. I couldn't help myself, right? Well, society assumes that you did have a free will and that you chose to kill those kids, because it's kind of like when you get a cold, nobody cares, right? You get a cold, it's just the chemicals in your body. They F you up, and nobody says, let off to prison with you. But you kill a child, then we say, you're evil, off to prison with you. What's the difference from a naturalistic worldview? They're just chemicals in the head, right? Chemicals in your brain cause you to sneeze.
Okay, so you're defining naturalism in the sense that the mind is not in any way, or not just the mind, consciousness in general is not in any way separate from the materialist interpretation of the universe, like atoms, molecules, things like that.
Yeah, basically from the naturalistic worldview, there is no mind. There is just brain, right? The brain is made of chemicals and synapses and different things.
Well, I would say that there are many atheists who do not hold that view. Thousands, in fact, who do make. I mean, many mathematicians, a lot of physicists too, do believe that there is something beyond the material world. For example, the biggest debate, in my opinion, is math. That's the biggest question, a question that most people really haven't delved into, but it's really a question of, does math exist? And I know that seems like a really bizarre question, but there are basically two interpretations. One is that math exists, like really, like numbers exist and things. And the other is that math is just simply a formula that we humans have come up with and have used to interpret, some things that we've seen. The problem with that particular interpretation is that there's no physical input for math. We can't say that, like, for color, we have light, for sound, we have sound waves, for pressure, we have chemical reactions, things like that. But there's no physical input for math. There's nothing that we can say, okay, well, the brain receives this and out comes math somehow. We don't have that for math. So there are, in fact, many atheist mathematicians and, quantum physicists and people like that who do think that there is something beyond the material world. So I just want to make that clear. There are people alive right now who do have an atheist worldview, who don't believe what you're saying.
Well, they believe in like aliens or something many times, but it's not a naturalistic worldview. It's not a materialism, I guess. You mentioned color. Color is a non-material thing, right? I close my eyes, I see black. I can picture purple. I can picture red, what red looks like. I'm thinking of a red truck. I'm thinking right now of the yellow Mustang I used to have, right? No light, yet I can see it. So where does that come from? right?
Yeah, that's interesting. But if you try to describe colors to a blind person who was born blind and had never seen color, and they've actually done experiments on this, they cannot even imagine or think about color. Or like, what if you try to describe red to someone who's never seen a color before? It doesn't compute. It simply doesn't compute.
Right. So it's difficult to describe something that somebody has never seen, but still, it's like a chair, right? It's kind of Play-Doh or something.
Well, what you're saying are memories. I mean, what you're saying can be described as memories.
So they were, but still, the color itself, I can still picture a color, right? The idea of the color, I can picture. Now, if you've never seen yellow, if you're blind from birth and you've never seen yellow, then it's hard to describe to somebody what something looks like a car or anything in the world, right? Because they've never seen it, they don't know what shapes are. These things are basically visual, but the idea still exists within the head. So
yeah, well I want to clarify that me and you come from a similar perspective in that there is something to the mind or consciousness. I don't know exactly what it is. Maybe it's God. Maybe it's some other thing. I have no idea. But I just want to clarify that I have this view. I share this view with you, and so do many atheists. Like I can name many atheists off the top of my head who do share the view that there is something beyond the material world. Like there are other things that cannot be explained and probably will never be explained. And math is probably, the best example that we can give of people believing in the existence of things that can't be empirically demonstrated to exist outside of our minds.
Yeah, but I think that kind of kills the idea of, that destroys the idea of materialism, naturalism, that there is only the physical material world.
It doesn't have to be.
What is it then? So let me.
I don't know doesn't lead to therefore God. You must know that.
Well, there has to be something, though, right?
Well, no, it doesn't have to be something. Like sometimes there is no explanation. Just because we don't know doesn't mean therefore God.
Well, no, but if I can provide an argument for God, then can you provide an argument for naturalism? Basically, what I'm saying here, though, is atheistic naturalist, evolutionary worldview. So we can go straight to the evolutionary worldview. Let me before I do that, Francis Crick, he's the co-Nobel Prize winner. He discovered DNA. The astonishing hypothesis is that your joys, your sorrows, your memories, your ambitions, your sense of identity and free will are in fact no more than the behavior of a vast assembly of nerve cells and their associated molecules. As Lewis Carroll's Alice might have phrased it, you're nothing but a pack of neurons, unquote. So, I mean, I've got a bunch. You mentioned I listened to a lot of Stefan Molyneux. I mean, I mentioned that before. I think we talked about him. He had a great debate with
until about I don't know 8 or 9 years ago until he went off the deep end. But
he's reversed quite a bit. He had a great conversation with Tom Woods on these things. He was pretty anti-religious for a long time, and he's kind of with the SJWs have changed his mind a little bit. The fact that most atheists tend to go towards everybody's going to worship something, right? What was that song?
I don't know where he went conservative. Like one day he just went conservative. It was really weird and bizarre and totally unexpected. He used to be like, I don't know.
Somebody said there's a great song by the Rolling Stones. I think it is. You're going to worship something, right? If you're not going to worship a god, typically you're going to worship yourself, or you're going to worship government, or you're going to, there's some entity there that you're going to give your adoration to.
I would argue there's a scientific explanation. I think as his income increased,
or you're going to worship science.
Based upon his notoriety and things like that, as his income increased, he became more conservative. But
so basically, I'd say on free will, I've got a thing here, and I'm up to 21 pages so far. I'm going to try to. This is going to be my dissertation. I'm actually thinking of focusing my whole dissertation on this free will as a basis for economic choice. But my thesis is free will requires a theistic worldview. And with Chaz, I was talking about this. You know, I'm not going to say this requires the Christian worldview, but it does require some kind of theistic worldview. Now, I would argue Judaic Christian, but I mean, I've got a lot of quotes in here from, you know, the most famous one, and he's made a lot of money off it as well, is Sam Harris. He's got a whole book that he wrote on the idea that free will is just an illusion. Therefore, you should stop acting as you do. It's really self-defeating, but you know. Yeah,
Sam Harris makes logically nonsensical arguments. Some of them are really good, and I supported those ones, but some of them are incredibly dumb, and I've noticed that neither he nor any of his supporters can defend the dumb argument, so that's how I know they're dumb.
Well, the thing I get, again, is the idea that you have no free will, so you should stop acting like you do, right? I mean, that's the basic argument. He hates religion. He thinks we should end religion. Well, I'm sorry, but I have no free will but to be religious according to your worldview. So
0% of what he says about Islam makes sense in the context of his arguments against free will. Like 0%, an absolute zero, because there can't be morality without free will.
So you can look at many of the new they called new atheists, right? Go to Big Think, Stephen Hawking. He used to say, well, you know, I can't disprove God. He might be there. I don't know. But now he's pretty adamant atheist. He doesn't believe in free will. I've got, you can go back to the ancient Greeks, kind of thought that your free will was due to a lack of knowledge. You're just ignorant, so you don't do the good. But, you know, 18th century Holbach, this I got from PBS, the Crash Course. So man's life is in line that nature commands him to describe upon the surface of the earth without his ever being able to swerve from it, even for an instant. He is born without his own consent. His organization does in no wise depend upon himself. His ideas come to him involuntarily. His habits are in the power of those who cause him to contract them. He is unceasingly modified by causes, whether visible or concealed, over which he has no control. You know, I can go on and on. He is good or bad, happy or miserable, wise or foolish, reasonable or irrational, without his well-being for anything in these various states. So, you know, basically you do what you do because science.
I fully understand the materialist worldview. There's no real reason why we should go over it. This is just background.
Okay, well, Sir Francis Galton, you know, you could I mean, there's a lot of people, naturalism, saying that if man evolved, then his mental faculties must be hereditary, right? So okay, if you're going to be an evolutionist, then where do these immaterial things come from? If evolution is true, what makes you know, your faculties trustable? Where do these ideas humans come from? You know, I think you're a anarcho-capitalist, so you believe in rights, right?
No.
You don't believe you have any rights, but you've declared your rights before, haven't you?
They're social constructs. I mean, they exist to the degree that people believe in them.
So you don't believe in property rights?
No, I believe in them, but that doesn't make them real.
Well, why do you believe in them if they're not real?
Well, for the same reason that a fish or a bird, for whatever reason, believes that piece of coral is theirs, even though there's no objective way to determine who gets what.
Is there any reason to think that a fish believes the coral is theirs?
Oh, yeah.
Property rights are essentially human.
No, you can see based on their actions that they are convinced that that's their hole. You know, they believe for whatever reason that that's their hole, and they're going to fight anyone who comes in that hole.
Well, they don't have any problem taking holes from other people, other dogs, right? Taking bones, peeing on trees. They mark their territory. Somebody else comes along and marks over the top of it. So I don't think they don't have any respect for property rights. They don't have any understanding of property rights. All they know is what a little child knows. Mine, right?
Yes, and everything on top of that is derived from that basic premise. All rights, all property, all government, everything.
So
like literally
there's
everything.
No reason it should be respected then. There's no reason it should be respected.
Oh, well, no, I would say there are some reasons. There's no objective reason, of course, but there are subjective reasons why it should be.
So you believe property rights exist your property rights exist, maybe.
So I believe that I should, like, for example, to give you, I will go down to the root. I believe this is my nose. There's no objective way that I can prove or demonstrate that this is in fact mine and not yours. I could give logical explanations such as, well, it's part of my body, but then you could respond, so what? Why isn't your body my property? That's a perfectly valid response to my argument. So in the end, there's no way to prove either way. Like, this could be your nose or it could be my nose. It's just that I believe that it's mine to such a degree that I am actually willing to kill another person in order to defend my property claim, whereas for you, it's probably not as important. You probably aren't willing to risk your life in order to defend your property claim on my nose. Therefore, whoever's willing to go the furthest, basically, is who we recognize as the actual owner.
Might makes right, then. So might makes right?
That's political reality. In my view, it doesn't make
evolutionary reality, right? That's evolutionary reality.
Evolution too, yeah, but when you're talking about like morally right or actual, there's a difference. Like we can say that the lion who ate the antelope or whatever, we can use descriptive language to say what happened here exactly. But saying, is it like did the lion have a moral right to eat the antelope? It's kind of silly.
Well, again, yeah, I mean, it is silly. If we can apply morals to humans, then we should, and humans come from apes, then we should apply morals to apes, but nobody does that, right? Lions, apes, humans, they're all the same thing.
Well, it could be that
you're not going to prosecute the lion for eating the antelope, right? Violating his property, his life.
It could be that there are different degrees of agency and different degrees of consciousness. They may not all be exactly equal. And this would tie into my worldview, which is I believe consciousness is a fundamental property of the universe. I don't think it's something that arises out of biology, which is, I guess, the common view. The reason I believe that is because after all this entire research, the last 200 years, whatever, we have come no closer to solving the hard problem of consciousness than when we started 3,000 years ago. We're still at the same place, which is, why the fuck are we even conscious in the first place? None of this makes sense. So my view is that consciousness is simply a fundamental property of the universe. I think everything's conscious, even down to like bacteria. Even below that, atoms, molecules. I think the degree to which, okay, so like you would agree that you're more conscious than a snail, right? You can see a clear difference between your level of consciousness and a snail. Well, I would say that's the same difference between a snail and a bacteria, and the difference between a bacteria and an atom. It's some non-zero degree of consciousness that exists in all things, and we just happen to be in a position where all the molecules have lined up correctly and we're able to amplify our experience of consciousness.
Well, one, that doesn't fit with naturalism, obviously. No evolutionist can really explain consciousness in and of itself where it exists. It is something outside of the natural world.
It's incompatible with their meta paradigm. If you believe that the entire universe can be, yeah, if you believe the entire universe can be explained by materialism, then you'll never have an explanation for consciousness because it simply doesn't make sense.
But they try. Back to rights, we could get into so what if we think in terms of a utilitarian viewpoint? Like, there's a lot of utilitarians here, right?
Mm-hmm.
I am. So you are great. So you have two eyes. Somebody has no eyes. Isn't it only right for us to take one of your eyes and give it to that person? Think of the immense benefit that person gets versus the small loss you.
I have a simple refutation. In reality, human reality, actual human societies, there's too much uncertainty. Like whenever the trolley problem is presented, it's presented in such a way as that you know exactly what the outcome will be. You know that either 5 people or 2 people will die. In reality, It's not actually like that. In reality, there's a question mark over both tracks, and even the person pulling the lever and the number of people inside of the trolley too. They're all variables and they're all question marks. It's just that when we talk about it in a philosophical way, we pretend as though these are known values and that we can actually be sure about these things. But in application, and for me, this is the difference between like science and technology and engineering. In application, the real world simply doesn't function the same way as it does in the mind. In the mind, it may be, okay, you're going to pull the lever, you're going to save 5 people, but you kill 2 people. In reality, the 5 is an unknown variable, and so is the 2, and you really don't have a clue who you're going to save and who
you're going to kill. I agree with you there, but what if we just forced everybody to be on a donor list? And then your number comes up, you donate your kidney or something like that. Well, there's in China, there was a meeting. I always bring this up in class. And obviously, I don't agree with any of this because I do believe rights exist. And I do believe humans have natural rights given by their creator. But they were talking about, who owns the wheat? And it's everybody owns it. Who owns the little seed on top of the wheat? Oh, everybody owns it. What about my tooth? Who owns my tooth? It's owned by everybody, right? Everybody owns it. And you get it like Tragedy of the Commons. Everybody owns it. Nobody owns it. But yeah. So everybody owns you. Utilitarianism. Everybody owns you. And when they need to harvest your organs, then they do so.
Well, that's what I said. Like for me, ANCAP is a utilitarian argument. It's not that everyone should or shouldn't do things. It's what are the consequences? What happens when we presume that the community or society or the state or whatever presume that they own all things, including the human beings living within their borders? What are the consequences of that? Okay, let's look to it. And we clearly see that societies based on that system are shittier than other societies. So there is actually a utilitarian argument against communism and for free markets.
And that's where you get to the reality versus theory, because they're still defending the theory, right? But
I can't whatever dumb or irrational people think, I can't speak to that, but I can only defend my view.
Yes, but leave socialists out of this. Dumb and irrational people. But, okay. So again, back to the atheist, naturalist, evolutionary worldview. Things like morality. What is right? What is wrong? Everybody wants to claim there is a right and a wrong, but without a transcendental being, I've debated this a couple times, that there is no such thing as right and wrong without some kind of transcendental being. There is no universal moral law without a universal moral law giver, and the universe itself cannot give itself moral laws.
In fact,
C.S. Lewis, I think.
I know the debate you're talking about. I think the guy, I don't know if it was Vanderbilt, but he debated Sam Harris. You know the guy I'm talking about, right? Christian pastor. He debated Sam Harris and a bunch of other guys. Maybe
Frank Turek or
can't fucking remember his name.
3 names.
He gives the same argument you're saying.
Craig?
Without a universal lawgiver or moral giver, we can't have morals, right? Because otherwise it's subjective.
Well, it's if there is a wrong, that implies there is a right. If there is a right, that implies universal moral laws. Universal moral laws, if they exist, they require a moral law giver. They're prescriptive, and so all prescriptive things require a prescriber. And if it's going to be universal, then it has to be prescribed from outside the universe.
Okay. So I think what you're really meaning to say and what he was really meaning to say, but they didn't use the words correctly, is all you're really saying is that morality is subjective, something I already agree with. To me,
I'm saying it's objective, but the atheist says it's subjective.
Yeah. Okay, yes.
But you can't live within a subjective moral worldview, because again, if you're going to say it's subjective and I come violate your quote unquote subjective moral laws, unquote, then who are you to force your moral viewpoint on me?
Okay, so what I would say to that is, what's the problem with subjective morality? Okay, so I enforce my subjective morality on you. What's the issue? I don't get it.
Well, again, if I come and I kill your kids, or I rape and slaughter your wife, you're going to be demanding justice, right? I would hope.
Of course, absolutely.
Well, who are you to force your moral laws on me?
I subjectively find that to be despicable, so I'm just going to enforce my morality on you. What's wrong with that?
Well, that's the point. How can you enforce your morality on me, though?
Why can't I?
I don't. Well, why? I don't believe in your morality. So, I mean, obviously, criminals don't believe in laws. They don't believe in morals. They don't.
My morality doesn't require you to believe in my morality. You understand how that works? That's what active morality.
But I'm saying that doesn't work, right? Because you're trying to enforce your morality on other people, and so yes, you can do that, but that's not a philosophical basis for it. Right? Sure, it's not a good argument. Well, I mean, you'll do it, yeah. Of course, you can do it. You can. It's like taking law into your own hands or something like that, right? If somebody raped your wife and killed your kids, then I think most people would probably say yes. Go find them, kill them, maybe torture them first, right? But does that mean it's wrong? Well, I think most people would still say yes. It's all wrong.
Yeah.
But
what's wrong with that?
What about your neighbor?
Right. Every single person who says that's wrong is saying that subjectively, right? You agree to
they're
that?
They're appealing to a universal morality.
Well, they may or may not, but in any case, it's still subjective.
They have no connection to you, right? They have no connection to you. Somebody sees something on TV, they say, "Oh, that's horrible! What a wicked, evil person!" Right?
Mm-hmm. But
they have no connection. It's purely.
But so what? What if they independently, subjectively came to that same conclusion? I don't understand what kind of problem that creates.
Well, it doesn't apply to them, so I don't know why they would come up with a subjective worldview, because it's just something. It's like reading a newspaper or reading a story. Reading a fiction book. What's the difference? They can have a viewpoint on it, but they're pretty much everybody would be having the same subjective moral view as well. I think like 100% of people that saw something like that would have the same subjective moral view. Now, how is that possible either?
Maybe they empathize. Maybe they have families too, and they don't want the same happening to their family. So they reason that, okay, well, if I don't want that to happen to my family, then I guess I don't want it to happen to someone else's family. And so that's wrong, because if it's wrong for me, then I guess it's wrong for others.
Okay, so it is universal then. If it's wrong for me, it's wrong for others.
There are some people who would say that's not true. There's psychopaths in the world. I'm actually a psychopath, so I know that. And some people just don't, they don't experience emotions in the same way as others. Okay,
well, again, not we'll say not good furniture for a naturalistic worldview. I would say some of these, as far as debates go, there's some really good debates. I'm a big fan of Phil Fernandez. You can watch some of his. He's a local guy here. He does some of these things. If again back to evolution, talk about reason. How does humans get reason? Why don't animals have reason?
I don't know. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I know dolphins.
I would say, let me go back to something you said in the beginning. What is your definition of a Christian, anyways?
Well,
I had an hour and a half. I had 2 back-to-back debates with
Joe on. Do you have another 45 minutes or not? Because I could get into my theology. It's very complex, and it would take up the rest of our.
Well, let me just say, I think that the basic definition of a Christian is one who believes that Christ is God. To declare yourself to be a Christian, I think you should believe that Christ is God, and that Jesus is God. He came to earth to save mankind, right? Died, resurrected on the 3rd day, lived the perfect life, born of a virgin. That's the basic Christian doctrine from the beginning.
Well, I have some theology.
So it violates evolution. It completely cannot coexist with an evolutionary worldview.
Should we have another 45 minutes or not? Because I don't want to get.
Well, we'll do that another time. Then we can do that another time.
All right.
But okay, so I don't know. You want to state more about your worldview, I guess?
Well, no, to me, it's quite clear that, people, millions or even billions of people with subjective morality can all come to the same conclusion. That's pretty obvious. That doesn't mean that it has to be objective. It's quite possible that they all seem to experience the same things based upon the fact that we all are derived from the same basic genetic structure. So it makes sense that we would agree on many, many, many things. Everyone seems to agree that having oxygen is a good thing, even though, there's no objective way to show this. It's just that, we all believe it. We all think that we all have a right to live. There's no way to prove that, but, we just all somehow every species simultaneously believes that they have a right to exist, and why should humans be considered any different than that?
Well, if we're all derived from the same stuff and we all have similar moral views, doesn't that help the lack of free will argument? There's not a cell in your body, your brain that you created, nor is there a single influence coming from the outside world that you brought into being, and yet everything you think and do arises from this ocean of prior causes?
Well, only because of the hard problem of consciousness. We don't know the extent to which consciousness may influence physical reality. The brain itself, is particularly the human brain, could be a quantum system. We don't really know. It's very hard to demonstrate either way, but it could be subject to, quantum physics. We're not really sure.
Okay, so just I don't know. Is that your statement?
No, we may never know. I mean, there are many unanswerable questions, like the measurement problem is probably the most obvious example. You can't know with any precision the exact location and direction and speed of
an atom.
Yeah, exactly. So you know what I mean by that, right?
Yeah.
There are unknowable things about this universe. I would consider God to be one of them. Essentially unknowable.
Unknowable as in his existence or him?
Nature, particularly. But, we basically don't know shit about that. I consider the Bible to be a very unreliable source for a variety of reasons. But
well, it's the most scrutinized book in the history of mankind, and yet nobody's ever been able to disprove any of it. So,
we can disprove.
It seems pretty reliable.
It's rather easily. We know for sure there weren't.
What?
We know for sure there weren't plants on the earth before the sun. That's easy to disprove. Genesis.
You can't disprove Genesis.
Well, do you believe there were plants on this planet before there was a sun?
I don't recall I don't recall the days, but I think there was light. There was light on the first day. So
where was the light coming from?
In heaven there's going to be light, no sun.
Okay. Do you believe the earth was created before the sun?
It says he dwelt on the surface of the deep. So that's the tough question there, is what does that exactly mean?
Genesis says there was plants here before the sun existed. So, I mean, I don't know.
Should we go read it?
Even begin to, for me, this is one of the reasons I had to drop out of seminary, just because it came to the point where I'm just goofing off and trolling my professors because I'm asking questions like these that I guess they've never thought about before. I don't know.
Well, I'll send links on that, or just one. I'll send you the Phil. Dr. Phil talks about that. Not Phil McGraw. My Dr. Phil, we'll call him.
Okay, well, anyways, back to morality. It is possible to be an atheist and live within that worldview that there is no God, and that all morality is subjective. there are many people alive right now who have that worldview, so that kind of contradicts your assertion.
Well, no, my point is that they're violating their own worldview. It's the idea that evolution. So I go back to what's the difference between a human and an ape? Well, I've listened to atheistic libertarians, right? And typically, where do rights come from? Rights come from the fact that we can reason. I say, reason? What makes you think you can reason?
Well, rights are social constructs. Like you have to know that first of all.
No, I don't. I absolutely disagree with that. They're just a social construct, and you don't actually have them. They don't exist at all.
Not real. They don't exist. Property is not a real thing. It's a belief.
Property is definitely a real thing. Property is a real thing. You can say, well, we don't have property rights. In fact, argue that with the communist that says you don't have property rights either. So
it's real things.
What?
Are beliefs real things?
Tangible or intangible?
Well, whatever you mean by real.
No, beliefs are real things. I mean, they're not tangible things, but people definitely have them.
Okay, so that's what you meant by property is real. That people believe.
No, I'd say property is like, I can bang on property, but the idea of property is also an actual thing. It's just intangible.
How can you objectively prove that's your house? Like, objectively?
Well, we just rent it, so I don't have to.
Okay, well, how can you objectively prove that?
Okay, so first user, right? First user. So you know the first user principle, right? You have land there. It's not used by anybody. It's not owned by anybody. First person that goes in and uses that land.
Theories. Many of them are very ridiculous to me, but...
As an anarcho-capitalist? Come on now.
All deontological libertarian arguments are ridiculous to me. Every single one of them. To me, that's just the basic fact.
So who owns land? It has to be owned by somebody. It's owned by government. You're going to say it's owned by government?
Well, no, you have to understand it's a belief. It's a belief. Property is a belief.
Well, property exists. I mean, I can stand on it. I can touch it. The ownership of property as an idea is also something real.
1 second. Do you believe in intellectual property?
Intellectual property, yeah, there's intellectual property as well. So that now you have an intangible thing. That exists.
Where?
Intangible. It's an intangible thing, obviously. But I'm saying property is in land, because you were talking about the house and stuff. So property as in things I own. Me, right? I can start with myself. I own myself. You said you own yourself, right?
I agree that the thing exists, but your claim of ownership, that seems to be a belief to me.
Well, you can start with the idea of I own myself, right? I think you can at least agree with that.
Can you prove that?
That I own myself?
Yeah. Can you prove that?
Well, can you provide me with an argument that somebody else owns me?
I subjectively believe that I own you.
Okay, then I own you, I guess. We can get into a communal ownership or something.
Exactly. Now you understand the subjective nature of property, right?
No, so property there are objective arguments for property. And again, I say I own myself. I control myself, right? I can say I own myself because I can move and I can sell my labor. I can sell my time. I can do things like that, right?
But how does that prove that you own yourself? Maybe you're in violation of my property rights. Maybe your labor is owed to me. Do
I exist? Then are you going to ask if I even exist? Right? I think, therefore I am. So
no,
I think I exist.
We could go even just to yourself. Like, why is that your arm? Your right arm? Why is that yours? Why isn't that mine? If I assert that you're...
Well, obviously, if there is no me, if my mind doesn't exist, then this body doesn't exist, right? Once my mind and my body are separated, then my body doesn't matter anymore. My body, you could say, it's not owned by me, I guess. But as long as my mind and my brain are actively integrated, because I do believe they are two different things, but as long as they're actively integrated, then I can own and fully control this body that belongs to me.
But that doesn't prove it's yours. It's not you. You can't prove that. You can never prove that it's your property because property can never be proven because it's a belief and it's an idea. I'm just going to say one last thing. I'm going to make you an ANCAP before 1 year's time. You will in fact be an ANCAP, and we should do this again.
Why would I want to be an ANCAP though? Why would I want to be an ANCAP? You imply I have the choice. Okay, thanks, Bronson. Good luck. Take care.